My university had invited us to go on a mission trip to build a home. So after a week of getting to learn the culture, eating the delicious food, and really mixing with the community, I was excited. After this week, I had decided that foreign service was what I wanted to do. I loved learning about other cultures. I loved meeting people. So when we arrived at the embassy and met Cornelius, the foreign service officer, I was ready to pick his brain. I had questions. What is the work you do? He explained to us about approving visas and meeting people and creating policy. That sounded right up my alley. But after we told Cornelius about how excited we were to create cement on our own for the first time by taking a shovel full of sand and dirt and water and mixing it, he seemed a little confused. Why didn't you just bring a cement mixer in? That would have been easier. The people of Tierra Blanca, they didn't know what a cement mixer was. The fact that Cornelius was so out of touch really started to concern me. The next time I was in an embassy, I was starting a new job, but not as a foreign service officer. I was swearing in as a United States Peace Corps volunteer in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, the capital. After 3 months of intensive cultural, technical, all kinds of training, I was ready to go to work. You see, I had a lot to learn, but I felt like I had come a far way. I knew nothing about Ethiopia when I got that letter. Where was it? What did they eat? There's coffee there? I like coffee. I was good with that. So the first day I was with the host family that I was going to be spending the next 3 months with, I sat down, Mohammed and Asma. I was so excited. I didn't know really anything about the Muslim religion, but I was going to get to live with a Muslim family and learn. So when Mohammed sat me down and said, "Andrea, do you know who Mohammed is?" I was excited. I knew the answer to this question. He's the Muslim prophet. I am not a Muslim. He is no prophet. Mohammed told me that although he was born Muslim, his family had converted to Protestant. Ethiopia is about 50% Christian and 50% Muslim. So there's a pretty good mix in there. So while we were at the embassy, about halfway through our swear-in ceremony, I got a tap on my shoulder from one of the staffers. He let me know that some protesting had broken out in the region that I was going to be moving to, the Oromo region. They were going to hold us in Addis for a couple of days while they tested to see what was going on. A couple of days of pizza and hot water, I was in. I could use a vacation at that point. So a week had gone by and still no word if we were going back to our towns. Another week passed. We started to talk amongst ourselves to see if we really thought we were going to get to go. One of my friends leaned in and asked me, "Would you do this again in another country?" I thought to myself, yeah, I would go to another country and do Peace Corps again, but I want to learn a language that I'm going to use in my future career. Because really, how often am I going to use Amharic or Oromifa? How many people have ever even heard of those languages? Let alone to know that those are only 2 languages out of the 83 that are spoken in Ethiopia. After 3 weeks, things had calmed down enough that Peace Corps decided it was time for me to go to my village. Chitu, tiny little town on a dirt road. Chitu means divided in Oromifa, but my town was anything but divided. The day that I arrived, my community helped me get my things out of the Land Rover and pack them into my corner house in the compound. My family met me with a delicious meal with injera, the flatbread. I loved my village. My mornings would start with me seeing Alam, my mom. I would open my door and she would be waiting. Andrea ko, hara, bishan hinjuru, netwik hinjuru, ibsa hinjuru, kotu, bunadugi. She would let me know what services were available. Did we have water? Probably not. Did we have electricity? No. Cell phone network? It didn't matter because we were going to have coffee. My days would be spent teaching agricultural practices like how to increase carrot production or HIV prevention or teaching students about English. But my favorite moments were with my children that lived in the compound. In the afternoon, they would come over and watch movies with me. Coconut was 5 and one of my best friends. His favorite movie was The Lion King. See, he was in preschool and starting to learn English words. So we would sit there and he would say, Andrea, kuninambeka, elephant. And I would say, Koti, kuninambeka, arba. And we would practice teaching each other English in Oramifa. I'm a firm believer that children are some of the best language teachers. He understood me and I could understand him. The longer I was in my community, the more I started to know about the troubles they were facing. See, I lived in the Oromia region of Ethiopia. It's the largest region in the country with the most people, but also some of the least representation. A year and a half into my service, there was an election. The ruling party won by 100% of the vote. None of them were Oromo. People felt persecuted. When they asked questions, they were arrested. Even if they didn't ask questions, they might be arrested. My brother attended university in the East. One day he was walking down the street with his friends to get coffee, and the police picked him up and accused him of being opposition party. He spent 9 months in prison in Ethiopia. The only reason that Alam and Tedessa knew was because their friends called and let them know. So twice a week, Alam would drive to Addis to bring him food, because in prison in Ethiopia, they don't feed you. They don't give you a bed, they don't give you a blanket. So if your family doesn't know, you're left to the people in your cell with you. As my time in Ethiopia started to go on, more and more protests broke out. I was going into my second year when they started sprouting up around me in the surrounding communities. They were getting worse. So I called Peace Corps and asked if I should leave. They told me to wait. It was safer to stay in my community than to travel on the road. After a week of me trying to constantly get in communication with them and the cell phone network being cut, Peace Corps finally agreed to come get me. I lived 117 kilometers outside of the capital, usually a 3-hour drive. It took Peace Corps 2.5 days to get to me. The roads were blockaded by protesters and by police. People were being shot, rocks were being thrown, tires were burning. When they finally got to me, I jumped into the car with a backpack on my back. I was sure I was going to be back to my village. There was no way I was going to be gone for more than 2 weeks. This would calm down. After a month of being in the capital, I got a phone call from the office of the Peace Corps. The director called me to let me know I would not be returning to Chitu. My service was going to come to an end in that way. He told me that the following week, Peace Corps would drive me to pack up my things. So when I got into that Land Rover, the driver let me know that we would have 3 hours to pack up everything I owned. The time that we arrived in Chitu, everyone in my community came out to see me, except for my counterpart. He didn't know I was coming back. He was out in the field teaching some farmers, so I never got to see him. My community helped me pack up those boxes and tied them shut with dried banana leaves and shoved them in. And as we drove away, the driver turned to me and said, "Aizosh, be strong. Change is good." 2.5 years later, I can say that change is good. Now that I'm working at the International Institute of New England, that language that I thought I would never use comes in handy almost daily. We have so many students coming in from different parts of the country, and there's some that have a little extra love in my heart. Last week I was waiting for the elevator and there was 2 women speaking Amharic. So I turned to them and said, "Salam nachu, inde nachu?" They turned to me surprised that I spoke Amharic. "Where did you learn it?" I said, "The first 3 months I was in Ethiopia, I lived in a town called Butajira in the Garage zone." She asked me which Kabele I lived in, which is the district. I said, "Oh, I lived in Kabele 5. "Which family?" "Mohammed and Asma." "They have 3 daughters?" I was so shocked. How could she know that they had 3 daughters? Mohammed and Asma are not exactly uncommon names. Turns out, she taught at the elementary school in Kabele 5 in Butajira. 92 million people in the country of Ethiopia. And this woman knows my family in Boston, Massachusetts. Change is good.